So Fox News hosts are going to talk about the economy here, and this is an awesome clip because you get to see in real time their mental gymnastics. So they have to downplay the negative effects of the Trump economy. So they're going to start with the things that they say are awesome. And it's the classic, stock market is so high, unemployment is so low. Terrible indicators of how your regular American is doing. But we'll come back to that after the clip. So they're going to play up the parts that are good, and then when they get to the parts that are negative, it's almost like comical and sad how poor their arguments are. Watch.
In fact, U.S. consumer confidence crushing expectations this month, soaring to its highest level since October of 2000.
And here to break all of this down, what it means for you and your wallet, is Stuart Varney, host of Varney and Company on the Fox Business Network. Tell us what this is all about.
This is one of the most important economic indicators there is, and it's an absolute blowout number. It's a signal of the spectacular success of the Trump growth agenda, and another signal that it will actually keep on going. If people are optimistic, if they're confident about their future, they will spend some money. They maybe change their jobs. They may be get a better house. They will spend. There will participants.
Where's the optimism coming from?
The Trump growth agenda. I mean, you've got a record low unemployment. You've got 4% growth for the overall economy, maybe more than that in this current quarter. And you've got this, the wages are rising, especially for people with a skill. So there's this optimism, there's this confidence, there's this dynamism, there's this vigor in our society. Prosperity has returned. And that indicator tells the story. Right. Optimism at an 18-year high.
And just to show there's work to be done, there's another study out, I know that caught your attention too, that 40% of American families struggle to meet at least one basic need. You know, like food, clothing, skipping a meal. That bothers me.
Medical. Okay. Well, consider this. 40% of Americans say that they struggled to meet one basic need at least once in the past year. Struggled. They talk about food insecurity. If you struggle to put one meal on the table, then you're part of the 40%. What's the word struggle really mean? We've all had a little tightness in the wallet every now and again. What does struggle actually mean? And another thing that people have had a hard time meeting is their medical bills. What, do you want to blame Obamacare for that? We were supposed to have lower medical costs, but we got higher medical costs.
Lack of insurance covering those costs as well.
And Stuart, if you're struggling to meet one of those basic needs, I would imagine those crumbs that Nancy Pelosi was talking about,
probably help out.
Those aren't crumbs. You put a lot of crumbs together, you got some real dough.
That's a Swanson TV dinner.
Don't gloss over the extraordinary success of the Trump growth agenda and the return of prosperity in America today. You won't see that reported today.
Yeah, you won't see it reported because it's not true. So, again, the indicators that they go to when they want to talk about, the Trump growth economy, so much prosperity, so much prosperity. They can only point to the unemployment rate, which is low. There's no doubt about that. But here's the problem with that. These are low-wage jobs that are replacing formerly higher-paying jobs. So that's not really a good thing. And by the way, you can have an economy where there's literally 0% unemployment. You know how you would reach that number? Slavery. I'm not being facetious. I'm not trying to be glib here. That's true. You can structure an economy where there's no unemployment. Have slavery. And then these idiots could go out there and say, the economy is doing fantastic. We have 0% unemployment. Yeah, but the details kind of matter as to how you got there now, don't they? So with the record unemployment rate, when you point out the fact that, these are really low-paying jobs, then that looks a little different, doesn't it? So they can point to the unemployment rate, but as I just described, it's a bullshit, indicator to point to. Then he just lies, and he said, wages are rising. That's not true. Wages are actually falling. They're not rising, they're falling. That's why he had to add that thing at the end like, especially if you have a particular skill. So in other words, you took one little itty-bitty aspect on wages and said, for them it's growing, Sure, it may be a tiny fraction, but for them, wages are growing, maybe. And by the way, if you check that fact, the details of that, it probably isn't even true. But I don't know, to be fair. But I do know that overall, wages are falling. They are not rising. And then, of course, there's the stock market, the argument of, corporate profits are soaring. Yeah. And that's not an indicator of how your average American is doing. It's an indicator of how the rich are doing. But again, see, that's who his audience really is. And then he proves that when he just brushes aside in the most casual, nonchalant way imaginable. And credit to KILMEADE for actually seemingly giving a fuck about this. He's like, yeah, but isn't that number a little weird that 40% of Americans struggle to meet basic needs? And Varney's like, well, that depends, my good chap. What does struggle really mean? That's going to be your fucking response? I mean, that is damn near close to Bill Clinton's, it depends on what the definition of is. That's what you just hit us with, Stuart Varney. Oh, what a jackass. Imagine learning that 40% of Americans struggle to meet basic needs, and your reaction is like, the economy's great. Okay, did you not just hear the thing I just said? 40% of Americans struggle to meet a basic need. I mean, you can't, this is a prosperity economy. The Trump economy, it's unbelievable. And it's going to continue. That's the other thing that's fucking hilarious. Listen, you don't have to be an economic genius to understand that we are in a giant bubble. Indeed, we are. Every time we've seen the stock market explode like this, it's followed up by a giant crash. It's called a boom-bust cycle, and this is what happens when you don't efficiently regulate the economy. So in the 19-teens, the 1920s, what did they call the 1920s? The Roaring 20s. They thought, oh, there's no way the good times are going to end. The stock market is soaring. This is awesome. And then in 1929, we had the Great Depression. Stock market crash, the Great Depression. And then Reagan also, he cut taxes for the rich and deregulated. The economy soared. Everybody's like, oh, the good times are never going to end. And then when Reagan left office, soon thereafter, boom, because of his policies, there was a giant downturn. Same thing under Bill Clinton and George W. Bush. Bill Clinton didn't cut taxes for the rich. Bill Clinton did deregulate, though, Wall Street. And then you had George W. Bush cut taxes for the rich and further deregulate Wall Street. And then what happened? You had the subprime mortgage crisis and the Great Recession. So whenever you have the economy, if it is slow and steady growth, that's sustainable. That's what we had in what's called the golden age of economic expansion in the U.S. That's what we had from FDR until the 1970s, late 1970s, when you started to have the deregulatory policies come into place and then, sped up under Ronald Reagan. So that was called the golden age of economic expansion. You had the New Deal was in place. You had efficient regulation of banking, and we had steady growth and no crashes over that very long time span. And then the second that we started deregulating, we started having crashes again. And so Trump gets in there. He does another round of giant tax cuts for the rich. He does the Bush tax cuts on steroids, basically. He does more deregulation. He fucking brags about how much deregulation he's doing, which is crazy if you know anything about history or economics. And then his fucking sycophants, these are people. Stuart Varney's a guy who's hired because he's supposed to be an expert on business. He doesn't know the first fucking thing about business because he's arguing, oh, this growth is never going to end under Donald Trump. The Donald Trump growth economy. Yes, it's going to continue going this way. I mean, I know that you're a sad partisan hack, Stuart, but at the very least, you should understand that when this crash happens, you're going to look like the fool you are and the liar that you are. So it's just so stupid. And then also, I want to give you guys some more facts about this economy so you understand what's really going on. And many of you are living this reality, so you get it. And no matter how much smoke he tries to blow up Trump's ass, it's not going to actually change the reality of the situation. So a lot of people don't know this, but 76% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. That seems like a pretty important fact as you're arguing the economy's wonderful. We also have half of workers in this country making $30,000 a year or less. Again, that seems like an important fact and a mind-blowing fact at that. And then he brought up medical bills. He's like, well, you can blame Obamacare for that. Blame Obamacare. Listen, Obamacare, I'm not a fan of, but it was a step in the right direction. You know what I blame for the current troubles in our healthcare system? Donald Trump, who did countless executive orders destroying Obamacare. 3 million people lost health insurance under Trump's administration. And the cost of medical bills, it's going up. And medical bills is one of the top causes of bankruptcy in this country. We have 29 million people who are uninsured. So Donald Trump does executive orders that destroys Obamacare and kicks more people off of health insurance. And your brilliant take on that is blame Obama? Get the fuck out of here, man. And we know the answer. The answer would be Medicare for all to fix that problem. But he doesn't advocate that. His only answer is what would exacerbate the problem. We need more free market in the realm of healthcare. Yeah. Yes. What a sad hack he is, man. So we have an economy that it's a house of cards, dude. It's a house of cards. And Trump, the guy who said, oh, I'm going to protect your job and it's not going to be outsourced. Now 93,000 jobs were outsourced under just his first year as president. And that's a good indicator of what will continue moving forward. So the guy who said he wasn't going to outsource is now outsourcing. The guy who said the forgotten man and woman will never be forgotten again. What's happening to their wages? They're going down. The unemployment rate might be low, but those are low-paying jobs, so that's not really a good indicator. So every time you go to an indicator that should matter, then you see what's really happening, is that all of this growth is really a growth in corporate profits, a growth in income for the well-off, and then everybody else is struggling. But see, the thing is, on Fox News and on Fox Business Network, that's their core audience. That's who they're really preaching to. The CEOs, the Wall Street people, the moneyed interest, the elites. And the other people who end up watching it and liking it, I mean, listen, there are people in the middle of the country, many of them, who have been duped. They've been duped. And, you know, they end up backing an agenda of billionaires and thinking that this is the agenda that's going to help them. Well, it most certainly is not.